Hey everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and this is not a Sweet Stuff Saturday. I'm actually just sitting down to do a video on the difference between minimalism in design and boring design. And this issue comes into my head a lot because we have quite a few really great designers out there that are sort of walking around the edges of minimalist design. And sometimes I'm thinking like, well, is this just bland or is this minimal? And so what I want to talk about are two knives. The first one is the Migron Acri, A-K-R-I. I think this is the mini Acri. I think there's actually a bigger one. And this is a, not a budget knife, but like a entry-level knife. If you go back to the taxonomy I laid out before. This is about 45 bucks. It is a Chinese-made knife. It is available on Amazon. It has G10 handles, and it has a 14C28N blade steel that is coated with this gray, smoke gray coating. It is relatively small. It's a 3.11 inch blade, and the whole thing weighs probably somewhere around 3 ounces. This is, in my mind, a boring knife. The other knife is the Sebenza 31. This one I purchased right before the price hike, and it runs S45VN blade steel. It has a titanium handle, and it features a frame lock. This knife is sort of famous for the frame lock. Everybody knows what this knife is. This knife, in my mind, is the epitome of minimal design. And so here's the thesis of this video, the argument. The difference between minimal design and boring design is confidence. And so what do I mean by that? The designer knows what to get rid of and what to keep because they have confidence in their design decisions. So let's take a look at the Sebenza's little cutout here for access to the lock bar. And let's take a look at the Migron's cutout for the lock bar. So the Sebenza and the Migron both have, or the Acri and the Sebenza both have cutouts. This one is much bigger. And it's bigger for two reasons. Number one, it gives you better access to the lock bar. But number two, if you look at the way your finger goes around this as like a finger notch, having this scooped out more actually makes it better for your finger when you're holding the knife. It gives you a little bit more purchase, and it sort of locks your finger in a little bit without having the ugly and unnecessary finger scallops that some knives have. So the Sebenza, the designer of the Sebenza, Chris Reeve, he knew what the cutout was for, but he also knew how to get something else out of the cutout. And so he didn't really care that it was a little bit bigger because he knew that that was the right choice design-wise. Whereas you compare the Migron, you can see that they've chamfered the liner lock here, so it's a little easier to get to. And it is easy to get to, but it's not so easy. Like this is clearly one of those liner locks that you have to disengage with your thumbnail because you really can't get the fat pad of your thumb in there. I mean, you can, but it's not convenient, and it's not something you could do certainly do comfortably when you first get the knife without looking. Like I'm not looking at the knife now, and I kind of have to fumble around to get it to work. But it's not pronounced. It's just, it's there, and it's not a design feature. It's just, it does that thing, right? It's a kind of like, what's the least we could do to make this work kind of design approach. Whereas Chris Reeve knew that by going further with the cutout, by making the cutout more pronounced, you actually get another sort of design element that makes the knife better. The Migron doesn't. So another thing I want to look at, like the Migron's handle is really simple. It's just this kind of slowly tapering curve or arc. There's not a whole lot going on here. It's basically what you would do when you design a handle and you put like the least amount of design or the least amount of effort into it. The Sebenza's handle is really quite interesting because it looks very simple, but it actually isn't. One of the things that you'll notice when you have a Sebenza is that the handle is actually sort of a dog bone shape. It tapers right here. If you have a knife and you use your knife and you use it a lot and you use it over the years, you notice that there's this place where if you thin out the handle on the folder, it feels better in your hand. And so even though these lines kind of look straight and kind of look parallel, they're actually not. There's actually, if I can get it to work on camera, so like that's, you can kind of see this is thicker. It tapers right to here so that it gets that swelled part, the place where the handle swells out into the cavity of your closed hand, but it gets this thin part, this like pinch point, right where you want your thumb and your finger to pinch. So it gives you a lot of purchase, even though the knife's handle is a relatively simple shape. By doing that slight cant in so that you get this sort of unusual asymmetric dog bone shape, like if you continue the line over here, you would get it so that the thinnest part of the blade is like right here, not in the middle. But that gives you a better purchase on the knife with less busyness. Like if you look at something like this knife, which is the Triple Aught Design Compact Dauntless, it is not a simple knife. I mean, it has these two really enormous finger scallops, and they do kind of work really well for my mid-sized hand. But it's substantially busier than the profile of the Sebenza, and yet I think the Sebenza probably works a little better in hand than that knife does, because it frees you up to use a bunch of different grips. Whereas that knife, the Dauntless, kind of dictates a certain way of holding the knife. This is, in my mind, an excellent example of minimalist design that really does do something different. It's not just he made it simple because he didn't want to put forth the effort. He knew that making it simple would give you the advantage of being able to switch grips, but at the same time, making the primary grip really good on the Sebenza. This is one of the secret sauces for the Sebenza, in my opinion. It's the lock feel and that handle that are the two things that really just make me love the Sebenza a lot. Another thing that I want to look at on the Miguron is the front flipper. So front flippers are one of my favorite types of deployments because when they are done correctly, a front flipper presents a really clean and very simple knife profile. So if you want to go one step further in minimalist design from the Sebenza, which is already, I think, a masterpiece of minimalism, get rid of the thumb stud and go to this knife. This knife is the Small Shimori by Gareth Bull, and it is a front flipper, and it is a super, sorry, flipping around the camera. It is a super compact knife that really has very, very few design elements to it. But because Gareth knew how to design this knife and the lines to use, instead of making the front flipper this really pokey, obvious thing, he just gave you enough to make it work, but not too much to disrupt the flow or the lines of the knife. Here, Miguron was just like, stick that thing way out there. It'll make it easier to flip. And who cares if it's ugly or actually not as minimal as this knife could be. They could cut this down quite a bit. It would still work really well as a front flipper. Obviously, you can't do this mod at home because it would screw up where the lock pin is. But it's just another example of lazy design that's kind of passed off as minimalism. The last thing I want to do is talk about what minimalism means in terms of things like pocket clips. So let's compare the 3 pocket clips so far, the knives we looked at. And the Dauntless is a special case because it has the hinderer clip. So you have this clip, which is a stamped steel clip with 2 holes that is a deep carry clip. I like this clip. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just like right there. It's perfectly serviceable. It's like par. It's a 1 on my 0, 1, 2 scale. This clip, on the other hand, is a masterclass. First of all, it's a blind clip, meaning it's screwed in from the inside. So as the knife is being assembled, the handles are 2 separate pieces. The clip is screwed into this handle side before the knife is assembled. because the only other support, the only other pillar other than the pivot and the lock pin is this screw, which is below the clip. So the clip is actually installed on the handle before the knife is assembled. And most knives where there's non-blind construction, the handle is assembled and then the clip is placed on. And by blind construction, what I mean is the screws on the inside you can't see. So in some cases, when they do a blind clip on something that's like an integral, they actually have a special screwdriver that fits down in there, and you can feel the head of the screw and tighten it without even being able to see the screw. Here, this knife you can obviously disassemble. It's not an integral, but the blind clip is still the same. The screws are in the inside. You can actually kind of see them if you peek down in there. So you can kind of, I'm just going to give you some raking light right there. And you can kind of see them. But this clip is so much better than the clip on the Miguron because it has this ramp at the back end. You know, oftentimes with these, you know, stamped steel clips versus these sculpted clips, the sculpted clips just come off as really boxy. And by rounding this off and putting a ramp on it, Gareth has made this clip a masterpiece. And you can look at this and look at the little bit busier, actually not that minimal, clip on the Sebenza. And the Sebenza has, you know, this mouth with the little downturn, so this is not like a snag magnet. It has the double dip, and it's actually not a deep carry clip. It does not carry over the top. It carries differently. So you're going to have about this much of the knife hanging out. That is still a better clip than this clip, because this clip, again, it's just kind of boring. It's big, and it creates hot spots. The other thing is, and this is a pet peeve of mine, it is visible when the knife is seen in silhouette. I do not like that. I really do not like that. It just strikes me as ultra lazy. You can change the handle, you can change the clip, but this is like probably an off-the-shelf clip that all the Migurons use. Not my favorite thing to see. It kind of reminds me of like sloppy work. The other thing is you can actually do a non-minimalist clip and have it be excellent. This knife here, and this is the V3 of the Millet Knives Torrent, which is a TJ Schwartz design produced by Millet Knives. This is one of the most complex clips you will ever see. It is a sculpted clip, as you can see. It's not stamped steel, but it has like multiple layers. It has a level of machining here for the screws, so they sit flush, and this is actually quite smooth, which means it's very good in the hand. The opening, the mouth of the clip, and the ramp, that's done separately. And then if you look at the inside here, you can see on the clip that there's like this little cross brace piece, but the cross brace piece is actually not coplanar with the top, this face of the clip here. It actually comes down. So like this is a perfect example of a really not minimalist clip that's excellent and distinctive, which is, you know, like if you're not going to go minimalist, go distinctive. And instead, again, the Miguron just went boring. So that was a little argument, a little thesis statement on the difference between boring and minimalist. And I think that in the end, the Miguron, while probably a good knife, is pretty boring. It is not a minimalist knife. It's a knife designed by numbers where the least amount of effort was put forward at every possible choice. The least amount of effort put forward in the cutout, in the handle design, in the flipper tab, and the pocket clip. It's a $40 knife, so I'm not going to get like too bent out of shape, but it's not an all-time classic, and it never will be, because it is basically minimal in the sense that they put the minimal amount of effort, but not minimalist in the sense that it was an intentional series of design choices made by people who have real design insights. So that's it. Look for a review of the Miguron coming soon.